That's the return, by the way. That's by Paratin. You'll find this is all music that I've made, and you can just go and check out Bandcamp if you want. Search for capital E, capital P-I-R-A-T-E-N, and that will you'll find my music. And that was from an album called Stell, and it's called The Return. You can also find all that sort of stuff on Spotify, and that will support the channel. Here we are looking down towards the French positions at Waterloo. We're on the left-hand side of the road, and we left with the artillery firing its shots. Now, Quiot's division was pulling up. Let me get a good view here. Was coming up here, marching past La Haye-Sainte. So La Haye-Sainte is here, and by this point here, they can see Bylandt's brigade moving back off this ridge on their right-hand side, and they're moving up here. And they must have thought that the Belgians are quitting the field. But you look behind here now, and you've got in echelon a number of columns of the divisions of d'Erlon's corps marching with you, and you're moving up here, and you now see that the artillery have quit their position as well. So you must feel pretty exuberant, but ready to sort of win this battle right here, right now. And the right-hand brigade is suddenly confronted by Kemp's troops. I'm trying to get this angle here, but it's not really working. They're coming up here, and as they get to the top, probably maybe even to the actual road itself. There we go. They get to the other side of this ridge, and the Kemp's brigade has 3 battalions standing in line, and they stand up really quickly. And the line is overlapping the column. It's wider than the column. And all these muskets pour fire into the French. And then there continued fire as well, with half volleys going on. And this halts this column. And at the same time over here, we have Pack's brigade. They stand up and they do the same thing, and they're pouring fire into Donzelet's division, who are moving up, who are slightly behind, 400 yards to the left and slightly behind. And then it happens all the way along with Best and Vinke, though it's probable by this time that the right-hand side hasn't actually made it up here. The colours of the 32nd Regiment is believed to... there was an attempt by a French officer to try and grab these colours, and we've got a quote here from... I think it's Brevet Major Toole. He was the commanding of the right centre division at the moment. It was Lieutenant Belcher of the 32nd Regiment. He wrote in a letter in 1843. So remember, these recollections are quite a long way past the battle itself. But he remembers, and I quote, "A mounted French officer had his horse shot under him, likely possibly by one of these 95th Rifles who are firing this way, and they're trying to target these officers. And when he extricated himself from the horse, we were close to him, and this guy, Lieutenant Belcher, had the colours with him, the colours of the regiment. And he said that this guy then suddenly fronted me and seized the staff, and they had a struggle with this flag. The French officer tried to withdraw his sabre, but this is when the covering colour sergeant, whose name was Switzer, he thrust his pike into the breast of the Frenchman, and then another guy fired his musket into him, and he fell dead at his feet. And then the Brevet Major Toole, commanding the right centre division at the moment, called out to save the brave fellow, but it was too late. So there's always something about colours. It's a great honour to capture one, and there was some, kind of, he was so brave that they were going to sort of like, let him off, as it were. So this is this sort of thing that's going on here. At the same time, this side, Wellington has ordered the infantry battalions of Kielmansegge and Ortega's brigades into square, because remember those cuirassiers who are threading this side, who had routed some of the Hanoverians who were caught in the open. So he orders them into square around this area somewhere, possibly back behind here again. And then he orders Uxbridge to form Somerset's household brigade of heavy cavalry into line, and in order to attack the French horsemen who were just cresting this ridge. So probably somewhere here. And the French cavalry are taken by surprise, and the British cavalry were fresher. They were also numerically, they had better numbers, and the French cuirassiers are pushed back. And it's believed they were pushed back and went back across the Johain Road. And if you're familiar with Victor Hugo's Les Miserables, this is believed to be the incident that's talked about in the Sunken Hollow, the Sunken Road incident. The rifles had been pushed back, by the way, at this point, and they had managed to reclaim this pit, and La Haye-Sainte remained in control by the Allies. George Cathcart, he was of the 6th Dragoons, and he was an ADC, aide-de-camp to Wellington. He describes this this road here. Is with regard to the hollow road near our right centre, that is the part nearest to the tree, for about 100 yards or more or less, it was very hollow. At the end, going down into the high road, it might have been 10 or 15 feet deep. There was but one way of going down into it from the field at the back of La Haye-Sainte, which was very slippery, which would admit not more than 2 horses at a time, and might have been at an angle of about 45 degrees, 300 or 400 yards, or perhaps less distance from the main road. It was little or no obstacle, and was frequently passed by cavalry. So that was in a letter that he wrote in 1835. So basically, he's essentially talking about this section of road here. So, and this is where also you're probably finding that the big pile of dirt up there might be coming from this. This part of the sunken road here, as he describes, for about 100 yards, is 15 foot deep. So imagine this ridge now up here being 15 foot higher, and then you get a sense then of how much soil has been removed from this ridge and moved up. And he then says that, but up here, probably in this area, it was easy to cross. So it was quite a steep little gully area there. So you can see how that was has changed a lot since this was written. It's also one of the reasons as well that it's very difficult to interpret what's going on the battlefield, because with a sunken hollow so deep, 15 feet deep, we then talk about when we get to the ends of the battle and the approach that the old guard make, then you can understand then why they would actually come up possibly and move this in this direction away from this section of the road, which would have been impassable. Well, very difficult for them to move over in any formation. Now, Kemp's brigades managed to halt this column, but it hasn't managed to rout the column. So yes, they've come up here, they've met this line, and they've been attacked, and they've had many casualties. But what's happened is that they've just paused here. We can assume somewhere around in this area. And what happens is that they then start conducting this maneuver to move from column to line, and it's a complicated one, but it does mean that we talked about the 3 battalions, and they can sort of, the first one stays still and the other one the other two peel off, form this line. So they're trying to triple the front, as it were, and then thus increase their and the amount that they can fire. And it's believed that they're in the process of doing this when Uxbridge led the Somerset heavy cavalry into their midst. So Ponsonby's Union Brigade was deployed to the east of the Ginap Road, and they'd been given orders to support Somerset, and they're believed to cross the crest close behind the Household Cavalry, and then attacked Donzelet's and Marconeau's divisions just as Somerset's crashed into Quiot's. So this is where Quiot's were. So this is the Somerset's brigades that are attacking into these guys, and then we get Ponsonby's Union Brigade attacking the columns on this side over here. And of course, you're capturing, especially Quiot's columns, you're capturing them in the process of moving into line. And so this is completely the worst time to be caught out by cavalry. Ponsonby's Union Brigade was made up of the 1st Dragoons, who are also known as the Royals. The 2nd Dragoons were the Scots Greys, and the 6th Dragoons were the Inniskillings. And because you've therefore got you've got English, Irish, and Scottish, that's why they're called the Union Brigade. And they completely break the divisions of Donzelet and Marconet in this area here. 2 eagles are taken from different divisions, and the Scots Greys charge Marconet on the left, and Sergeant Urwart, he takes the eagle of the 45th French Regiment. And the Royals charged Division of Donsoleil. It's probably somewhere in this area here. And Captain Clark captures the Eagle of the 105th Regiment. It's believed up to 3,000 prisoners are captured and secured. Many of them who did surrender, they were brought back here but escaped because there was simply not enough troops to guard them. Duret's division on the right flank in front of Papelotte were the only part of the French corps that were not charged. And so basically, essentially, d'Erlon is finding that his whole corps is thwarted, temporarily destroyed. 2 batteries of light artillery are captured. And yeah, so a well-timed cavalry charge in the end of the day. Now, if the British cavalry here had stopped at this point, shown control, it would have been one of the finest cavalry moments in British history, and it would be, famous. However, they would have saved the day and all that, and they if they had rallied back, they could have come back quickly, got back round here, reformed up, and been useful for the rest of the day. The problem is they are become intoxicated with their success, and all professional behavior is just thrown to the wind. They are now all about individual acts of gallantry or individual greed, whatever. They just turn into this sort of a rabble, a sort of a drunken sort of high on success, uncontrolled glee, and this spread in all the parts of the cavalry. Even it's not just the young and the novices or the inexperienced, but it's the old as well, the senior officers. And Uxbridge loses all control of the Household Brigade, and Ponsonby leads his brigade all the way across the valley to the, essentially probably this ridge here, where the Grand Battery is lined up. And so this basically, I'm not a horse expert, but it blows the horses, and it turns the controlled charge into an uncoordinated series of attacks on these artillery pieces. And this gives the opportunity to the French to retaliate. And it's believed that Napoleon himself orders Jacquinot's lancers to ride up and pick off these uncoordinated stragglers in this area here. So one of the most famous parts of the Battle of Waterloo. So we have and let's have a look at see what that would look like then. If you're on a horse, you're talking about riding through here, and down into this area here, and you just see these guns on this ridge here, and you just carry on up, and you're just blowing your horse. The horse is knackered, and that just allows these French lancers to come up and pick you off because your horse can't operate anymore. Ponsonby, he's killed during this action. He was believed to be he was captured and then killed. Of the 2,000 horses that begun the charge, it's believed around about half of them, 1,000 of the horses, were lost. 700 to 800 of the men involved in this charge are killed, wounded, or missing. And it was only because on this far side here, there's the light cavalry of Vandeleur and Vivian. They moved forwards on the eastern flank and essentially managed to prevent their companions from being completely eliminated. They provided some support and intimidation towards these lancers on this side. So Frederick Ponsonby was wounded and spent the night on the ground somewhere in this area here. So, and this is something that Wellington had always thought about his cavalry, that they were not disciplined, lacked professionalism. It was a cultural issue. It was almost like they had the attitude that they were on a glorified fox hunt. And Wellington had noticed this when he was in the peninsula. But interestingly enough, with all things considered, and especially with the relationship that Wellington had with Uxbridge, one thing Wellington doesn't do is actually criticize Uxbridge in the future. He never publicly criticizes Uxbridge over this event. And so I think what you have to do at the end of the day is take from that Wellington believed the charge that these brigades, cavalry brigades, did at this point actually had had a big impact on the success of the battle, and it shows possibly that the pressure that these French columns were putting on his line was very intense, and if they had been allowed to form into line, then the result could have been a lot different. So yes, the cavalry were indisciplined, but they had broken this advance on this side. Now, remember as well, Wellington is all about delaying. He needs to delay as much as possible, and so, you know, it's another example of, like, it's just taken the French longer now to get a success. It means that they're going to be knocked back. They've got to reorganize, and especially on this side of the battlefield as well, it's unlikely that there's going to be much more pressure from this side of the battlefield. So it enables Wellington essentially to tighten his lines, to bring back any outlying troops from this side, bring him back into his center. So the whole overall plan is still on, as it were. Right, think we will leave that there. And when we come back, we'll just wrap up a few of the essentials, and we'll talk a bit now about this sort of period, kind of a bit of a lull in the battle around about this time. And we're in this sort of 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon now, and we'll get to this sort of point where there's a sort of slight lull in the battle. Okay, so I will be off, and I'll be back live in a couple of minutes, and I'll see you on YouTube in the next part.